Recently, John Oliver from Last Week Tonight took on the consulting industry, specifically McKinsey.
How dare you?
Since we know a thing or two about this company, we thought it's only fitting to post our reaction to this episode. A lot of people talk about McKinsey, but hardly anyone has a clue. That's why we want to use this opportunity to give you an insider perspective on where John is right, where he's wrong, and where it's just not so simple. We have a couple of clips and statements from the video prepared, so let's jump right in.
They serve a lot of clients with really harmful effects. They know exactly what the repercussions are going to be, and then they say, we're going to do it anyway. And that tells you all you need to know about the firm.
Right. That's an inherently alarming thing to hear about a business, isn't it? Generally, you want companies to mitigate harm, not actively seek it out.
Alright, that's the first clip and we're off to a good start. So this guy, Eric, doesn't give any examples, and neither does John. But he insinuates that working for an oil company makes you inherently evil.
In exactly 5 days, we will be $100 billion richer.
And even worse, McKinsey is seeking out harm instead of mitigating it. Let's take this step by step. First off, working for an oil company doesn't make you inherently evil. Is a gas station employee now also in on it? The real question is, what do you do at these companies? McKinsey would probably say, well, this is where the polluters are. And if we can address pollution at the biggest polluters, then that's real impact. Obviously, no one goes to Exxon to advise them how to make their oil spills even bigger. Instead, however, it's very easy to imagine how McKinsey went to them and helped create a net zero roadmap. Because obviously, Exxon needs to know what future markets to address, what technologies to invest in, and how to restructure their organization when getting ready for such a huge transformation. So clearly, you're not automatically evil when you're helping an oil company. And just to be clear, we're not defending oil companies here. They are not saints and have plenty of blood on their hands. The unfortunate truth, however, is that they are still an integral part of our energy system for another decade or even two. And even on such a long timeline, it's going to be a massive transformation for our society. So in our opinion, you can't just act as if these companies weren't there, you have to engage with them somehow. Alright, so much for that. But there's another problem with this clip. It fails to account for all the projects with real societal benefits. Right now at McKinsey, there are green projects left, right and center. In fact, the guy we saw in the beginning, Eric, somehow still proudly presents his work at McKinsey on LinkedIn. And among the projects listed, he himself mentions all the work on hydrogen power and EV charging infrastructure he did for utility clients. On a side note, it's always funny how someone with 1.5 years of work experience becomes the big whistleblower. This guy lists at least 5 projects here, all of which pretty innocuous by the way. In 1.5 years, there isn't even time to do more than 5 projects where he could have seen all the evils he claims. Anyways, he's an author now, but not before he went to the Silicon Valley Bank to work in strategy. So all in all, on this point we'd say John is wrong. Moving on.
And the thing is, that level of swagger might make some sense if McKinsey's advice was consistently novel and brilliant. But it's had some big misses. Famously, in the early 1980s, its client AT&T asked McKinsey to estimate how many cell phones would be in use in the world by the turn of the century. And McKinsey concluded that the total market would only be about 900,000 phones total, which persuaded AT&T to pull out of the market for a while. And to be fair, McKinsey were only off by around 739 million, or 82,000%.
Alright, so now John says McKinsey advice can be completely wrong. Well, yeah, that AT&T story was clearly a big turd. But as the famous saying goes, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. And history is littered with bad tech predictions. Hindsight is 20/20 and that prediction looks stupid today. But being in that time is a whole different story. This is the Motorola Dynatac. It came out in 1983 and it was the hottest shit. It cost $4,000 or more than $12,000 in today's money and had the beautiful form factor brick. This was truly a revolutionary product, the first commercially available cell phone ever. And now you have to consider that the McKinsey prediction was made 3 years before this first cell phone hit the market. In such a dynamic situation, it's pretty clear that you can be wildly wrong. In our personal experience, we only made few such forecasts. They were much better, but obviously in way less dynamic markets. But at the end of the day, you have to put all that into perspective. If McKinsey's advice was so bad all the time, they'd be out of business a long time ago. The truth, however, is that the successful projects massively outweigh the failures. Let's make a little estimate. Of the 30-something thousand people at McKinsey, there are about 20,000 regular frontline consultants. The rest is back office or special functions. If the consultants work at 60% utilization, which is quite realistic, then there are about 12,000 consultants involved in projects right now. And if the average team consists of 3 consultants, that means there are right now 4,000 McKinsey projects ongoing around the world. And most of them with long-time clients. So someone seems to be happy.
One of the most difficult things to find is satisfied McKinsey clients. Because what McKinsey does is it sells credit for its ideas. If you're the CEO of a company and hire them, you don't want them running around saying, "We told them to make that acquisition. That was us, that was us." They take no credit, they take no blame. That is also a brilliant part of their business model.
It's just the nature of the game that you hear a disproportionate amount of the bad stuff and nothing about the good stuff. But that doesn't make it right. And so in our view, the assertion that the advice sucks a lot of the time is wrong, with some notable exceptions. Alright, let's keep going.
And that's not a one-off. Over the years, there have repeatedly been grumbles that McKinsey oversells its brilliance. In the words of one Fortune story, while some of its work can be highly sophisticated, much of the time the firm merely reorganises sales forces or designs by-the-numbers downsizing to reduce overhead. And those are just obvious first-thought ideas. Essentially, McKinsey is a firm that projects a huge amount of confidence to sell a frequently unremarkable product at sky-high prices, making them truly the Salt Bay of companies. You've had salt before, but have you ever had it from a douche?
Alright, so John says McKinsey is overselling obvious advice. Well, let's clear up a major misconception about the consulting industry. It feels like McKinsey just says, yeah, fire 1,000 people. And that's the end of the story. But no one would pay $1 million for that. There's a little bit more to it than just dropping a one-liner and then fleeing the scene. To illustrate this point, let's just look at how a supposedly simple downsizing project could work. Imagine a company isn't doing so well and is bringing in consultants to cut costs. Let's say they look at different back office functions to achieve that goal. That could be the finance department, accounting, HR, payroll, and office management, for example. Now, the first thing that consultants do is bring in benchmarks about what the market is doing. And for the first time, the client realizes, wow, compared to the market, my HR department is bloated as hell. Now, once you decide you want to bring down the cost of your HR department to market average, the second step is to figure out ways to do that. You could keep the workload the same and offshore the department. You could also try and reduce the workload by improving processes. Or you could do it with fewer people by better training the remaining ones and introducing new IT tools. All these options have pros and cons, and working out the best solution is something that consultants do together with clients. And in a third step, the consultants might help design a new operating model so that the processes still function as they should, but in a new, lower cost setup. So you see, even such a seemingly simple project around downsizing isn't straightforward and requires a lot of insights, analyses, and planning. And the same goes for all other types of projects. And that's the point. Even obvious advice isn't easy to operationalize, and that's where consultants help. That's something that John and many others don't understand, but we're here to clarify. And so the idea that McKinsey is getting paid just for giving obvious advice, in our view, is wrong. But granted, looking at those old training videos is extremely cringe. Thank God we've never seen anything like that in real life, and this is a thing of the past. Okay, let's move on.
And if you think that was damaging, McKinsey's also worked with Purdue Pharma. They actually made nearly $84 million in fees from Purdue for advice on how to, quote, turbocharge sales of OxyContin. In fact, listen to the AG of Massachusetts explain just how intimately McKinsey was involved in Purdue's sales process.
McKinsey consultants actually went with Purdue sales reps to doctors' offices here in Massachusetts to critique them on how effective they were at selling OxyContin.
It's true. They did ride-alongs. And honestly, I didn't think I could have any sympathy for Purdue sales reps until I learned that they were trapped in a car with a McKinsey consultant for hours. Yeah, you mentioned that you went to Harvard. can we please just be quiet and go sell some poison?
Alright, so this is the story about Purdue Pharma, which basically exploded over the last couple of years. The point is that, as John said, McKinsey helped Purdue Pharma increase the sale of opioids, and given their addictive nature, overprescribing them is a major contributor to the opioid epidemic. Well, there are no two ways about it. McKinsey really hit rock bottom here.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
What a major fuck up. And even if McKinsey never admitted any wrongdoing, paying hundreds of millions in settlements and pledging to stop any opioid-related advisory is all you need to know. So this story is 100% right. But let's give you some additional details. Not to downplay it, but to give some perspective. McKinsey got paid $84 million in fees over the years. And now, they already paid well over $800 million in settlements, with potentially more to come. And we're not even talking about the reputational damage and all the client projects lost due to that. So McKinsey will definitely think this over at least 1,000 times before ever going near such work ever again. Another aspect that was discussed later in the video was around conflicts of interest. Advising the regulator, so the FDA, and Purdue Pharma, the company to be regulated at the same time and by the same people, that's another dimension of this fuck up. Normally, and exactly to avoid such conflicts of interest, consulting firms set up Chinese walls. That means you can't work for competitors in the same industry, or for a regulator and a subject of regulation. In fact, we were always told not to discuss our work, neither with anyone outside the immediate project team, nor with our friends and family. And we've been on both sides of the Chinese wall actually. Once when we needed some insights from another team and didn't get it, and another time when we were asked by another team for insights, but our responsible partner denied that. So Chinese walls exist, and in principle they work, but of course, one fuck up is all it takes to cause a catastrophe. And in this case, it also took a lot of criminal energy by the partners in charge. One thing we want to say in defense of the firm, you can't lump all the people there together. 99.9% of the organization had nothing to do with that. They have different clients in a different region and work on different projects. So a partner focused on airlines in Asia might as well have learned about the story from the news. Much like you can't blame Subway employees for Jared Fogle, it's hard to assign blame to everyone. And even if they weren't responsible, all the partners got hit by the damages. But what do you think? How can consulting firms and society make sure something like that can't happen again, whether with involvement of consulting firms or done solely by the pharma company? Before anyone says, dissolve McKinsey, well, it's not so easy. The partners could, under a new name, start a new firm while continuing to serve the same old clients. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And we keep going.
One of the interview questions I was asked in my final rounds was how many pigs are in China, which sounds like a very silly question, but it's a really good question to test how you think, because it's not only, the answer doesn't matter, it's how, can you structure a problem? Can you take a very nebulous situation and put structure around it in a way that makes sense, and then logically deduce things in order to get to an answer that's meaningful?
I mean, sure, that is one way to describe it. Another way might be to say that they're just trying to see how good you are at bullshitting your way to a plausible-sounding answer.
Okay, now we're talking about the recruiting process. This clip shouldn't be too controversial, but let's take the opportunity to discuss it a bit. The interview question that was described here is called a market sizing question. And you could get that in your consulting interviews, but also non-consulting firms may use them. John now says these interviews are there to test how well you bullshit. The reality, though, is much closer to what the woman said. It really tests your logic and common sense if you have little or no data to go off. I guess it's obvious that you can't use Google in an interview. But even if you were the nephew of Jin Yingling and knew the exact right answer, you'd fail in the interview because it's not so much about your actual result, but much more about how you'd approach the problem. That being said, your result should still be in the ballpark. Plus minus 20% from the actual answer is great, being off by a factor of 10 is a no-no. And that's why those interview questions are so tough. So clearly, these interviews do not test how well you bullshit. Moving on.
But it's not just private companies. Remember, McKinsey's frequently hired by government agencies too, where again, their advice has not brought universally positive change.
Alright, now for the last section, we're gonna talk about public sector work. John is addressing two topics here, Rikers and the Saudi government. Let's start with Rikers, where John suggests that McKinsey shows bad conduct in certain government projects.
In 2014, New York City brought McKinsey in to figure out how to reduce violence at Rikers. What imaginative strategies did McKinsey try to implement? Oh, I don't know, just fun things like expanding the use of tasers, shotguns and aggressive dogs. It's some very outside-the-box thinking for people literally trapped inside boxes. But its big project was an anti-violence program called Restart, and it claimed that violence had dropped more than 50% in the Restart facilities, which sounds great. Unfortunately, it turned out that number was bogus because jail officials and McKinsey consultants had reportedly jointly rigged the Restart program by stacking the units with inmates they believed to be unlikely to get into fights or to attack staff in the first place. And while McKinsey, to this day, defends that program and denies skewing the results, it is notable that when ProPublica later crunched the numbers for Rikers overall, they found that jailhouse violence there had actually risen at nearly 50% since McKinsey began its assignment.
I think we can all agree the whole prison system in the US is a big fat dumpster fire. Trying to improve that is not a bad idea in principle, and the clients seem to be happy. This story, though, is about fudging the numbers. Now, it's obvious that everyone will be selective about what numbers to show and how best to tell their story. If you're in an argument, if you're a politician, or if you're a CEO trying to impress shareholders, you'll always pick the numbers that make you look the best. But here, McKinsey and the Rikers leadership seem to have literally rigged it, and that is unacceptable. ProPublica studied the situation and claims that violence went up after the project. Now, we don't know the study, but we'll take their word for it. And if that is the case, yes, that's pretty messed up. Okay, let's move on to the Saudi story, where John makes the case that McKinsey is supporting authoritarian regimes.
And are so deeply entrenched in the government of Saudi Arabia that Saudi Arabia's planning ministry has been dubbed the Ministry of McKinsey. And it will loudly defend its work there, saying that it feels it's making the country a better place. But that feat of mental gymnastics got a little trickier after Jamal Khashoggi was assassinated. Just a few months later, McKinsey's head at the time was on CNBC trying to defend its work in the country and reassuring everyone that it had a strict moral code.
When you find out that your client is a murderer, you do what? You walk. You walk.
Oh, you walk, do you? That sounds good, except here's the thing, they didn't walk. So unless you walk is short for you walk to the front of the line and pick up your lanyard for another fun weekend at the Journalist Chop-In Business Jamboree, you are full of shit.
Okay, just to be fair, Kevin did walk. Not on his own terms, but he walked. Even though he didn't walk very far. He walked across the street to McKinsey's evil twin in investment banking, Goldman Sachs.
But wait, because it gets even worse. Because it later emerged that in one of McKinsey's reports, it highlighted 3 people who drove negative conversation on Twitter about Saudi government policies. This is that slide, featuring names, pictures, criticisms, and follow accounts. And subsequently, some of those people were, and you're not going to believe this, targeted by the Saudi government. Now, at this point, I have to tell you, McKinsey insists there is no evidence the slide deck was connected to the death of Jamal Khashoggi or exposed dissidents, and that the deck wasn't prepared for the Saudi government. In fact, when this story initially came to light, they said the report's intended primary audience was internal. But come on! What part of the way Saudi Arabia operates made you think that a McKinsey-curated list of shit-talking dissidents would be a good thing to put together? You're working in one of the rootinest, tootinest, journalist-shootinest regimes in the Middle East.
So, a couple of points on this. First, this notion that McKinsey is some secret agent or government assassin for the Crown Prince is crazy. Those influencers that got in trouble, well, as influencers, by their very nature, they are public figures. You don't need to be a genius to sniff them out. And the supposedly internal slide was probably cobbled together by an intern late at night as part of a 100-page deck. I mean, look at it. This is bad formatting. A partner wouldn't allow us to show such an ugly slide to a client.
WTF? What the
That's why it's completely plausible that it's an internal slide. So, no smoking gun in our view. In any case, it's hard to prohibit a Saudi McKinsey consultant to work for the Saudi government. He might as well do it without the McKinsey label, and how that improves the situation is unclear to us. More broadly speaking, how do you decide where in the world to engage? There are plenty of places with a terrible human rights situation. And if you boycott any place with an imperfect human rights record, you're left with one place to deal with. Denmark. Frickin' Denmark. So you have to draw the line somewhere. One positive story to mention here is how McKinsey dealt with the Russia-Ukraine war. Within days of Russia's attack, all the client service in Russia was stopped, and within just a few weeks, all the consultants, including their families, were moved to Kazakhstan. Everyone who wanted to stay at the company was later reassigned to another office, and McKinsey facilitated the move. Meanwhile, a lot of other large corporates took such steps much later or not at all. So you see, the situation is not so clear-cut. Working with government agencies, especially in authoritarian regimes, is something to better avoid. On the one hand, public sector work is always sensitive, and even more so in these places. And on the other hand, public sector work is small business compared to private sector work. That's why McKinsey dialed back its engagement in the public sector. So all in all, when it comes to McKinsey's relationship with problematic governments and countries, we'd say it's not so simple. So there you have it. This was our reaction to John Oliver's segment on McKinsey. We hope you got a new perspective, and if you have any more questions, leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell for more content like this. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions or if there's a topic you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.